White House is hunting for leakers, and you just heard from Greg Jarrett in the last hour, who says that there is a lot to go on, including charges of treason, which could land you in the slammer if found guilty for years, decades even, to former Congresswoman Nan Hayworth and former Congressman Dennis Kucinich on these attempts to undermine the president. Dennis Kucinich, let me begin with you. There's many who are looking at this and saying, all right, this is nothing new. What is new, and maybe you've studied this better than I, is how many times it happens and the frequency and the number. How do we get to the bottom of that?
Well, first of all, we need to get to the bottom of it. What we have here, and this is with apologies to Lincoln at Gettysburg, is government of the leakers, by the leakers, and for the leakers. It's all a secret agenda that's being driven to destabilize a presidency, perhaps to even knock out a president. But this is bad for the country. And it also raises questions about journalistic standards as well. The continued use of these secret sources, anonymous sources, to bring out these huge stories about what's going on inside of our government is really, requires journalists to come forward and say, hey, here's a name and a face to that story.
You know, Nan Hayworth, one of the things I've seen here is, obviously, and both parties play this game, the leaks were a very big issue during the campaign, not so much now. Republicans, the leaks weren't a very big deal during the campaign, very much so now. So I know how this can be played by both sides. But we do have a serious problem here if you have the appearance of a sort of a rogue intelligence system that is almost like a shadow government doing stuff. How do you police that, punish that?
Right. Well, Neil, I think, they have an irresistible zeal, because I think these folks in the media, and also so many holdovers, unfortunately, from the previous administration, feel somehow, I think, they are reliving like 1931, 1932 in Germany. They see the president as that kind of existential threat. They are not going to stop. So
yeah, they also don't see themselves as leakers. I was telling Greg Jarrett, I was watching another news channel. I have to do my homework. And they were calling as if they're trying to get after something that is bad in a role that they're releasing this information as a constitutional duty. And that's what this is about.
And it's toxic and it's wrong. They're wrong about the president. They're wrong about his mission. But it's incumbent on the White House. It's incumbent on the president, number one, to lean on all his cabinet members and department heads to find these leakers or to hold those in supervisory positions responsible.
What about a lie detector test?
Well, I think any means, and I know you were just talking about that with Greg Jarrett, I don't think that's unreasonable. Whatever means they need to do, they'll know it's effective when they stop the leaks. But the other half of it is that this administration really has to kick up the effort to staff the executive branch. They are behind on staffing, and they need to contrate on that.
Well, good luck with that. No, you're right. But, Dennis, and one of the things I've seen is that if the leakers see themselves as doing something honorable because they don't like this guy, then they interpret themselves not as leakers but as whistleblowers, to the point I raised with the Congresswoman that, and maybe you saw this in Congress, where some people felt compelled to relay information, much as we had at the time of the Pentagon Papers, of the Defense Department foisting lies about the progress, let's say, back then of the Vietnam War, that they have an obligation to report some of the incidents that disturb them. Do you agree with that?
If you put your name and face with it, Daniel Ellsberg came forward. You look at...
well, he didn't come forward as much as it was leaked,
but it was. But eventually we had a name. Eventually we had a name and a face. And you look at Snowden, at Chelsea Manning, at Julian Assange. They were all charged with criminal conduct, or are being imputed. Criminal conduct's imputed to them. And wait a minute. If that's true, then what about the people who are trying to do this anonymously to bring down a government? I mean, I think that there has to be accountability, and if you're a real patriot, you'll step forward with your name, with your face, and you say, we have to do something about this and stop it. That's what Assange has done. That's what Snowden did. That's what Manning ended up doing. So look, what about these other people? You can't call them patriots if they're in hiding and they're throwing rocks from cover.
Does the media have any responsibility, Congresswoman, here, if you keep quoting the same people who might have an agenda here? Are you responsible? We learned in the Pentagon Papers case with the New York Times, Washington Post, no, they were not. They were just you know, parroting or copying that information and giving it to the people?
Well, look, when the media participate in expanding on and promoting these stories, they are participating in acts of sabotage against our national interests, because these leakers are doing, as you so aptly discussed with Greg Jarrett, these leakers are doing things that are against our national interests, that are crimes. So the media are lending themselves willingly, those who participate in this, as, in essence, accessories to crimes. We need to follow our national interest. We need an administration that works and that can do its work in the way it always has if it's going to be effective. We can't have an administration full of people who feel that their job is to bring down the president. That is an act of sabotage, and it's not acceptable, and the media should not promote it.
Congressman, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, Nan makes a good point, and think about this. Well, we all support the First Amendment. Here we are. There's also been Supreme Court cases, notably a 1996 case, Shepard versus Maxwell, that put some limits on what could be said that would place somebody under suspicion or even imply guilt in the media without any attempt that people could have to defend themselves. So, you know, people have their constitutional rights to be free of suspicion without due process of law, and we don't. That's going by the boards. People are convicted in the media, and particularly in the case of Kucinich here.
All right, guys, I want to thank you both. You argue your points very eloquently.